How did Trump increase his support this much? He made inroads in groups that have been Democratic voters, going from about 32% of the Latino vote to 45%. That's a 13-point jump. It's a major shift reflected across the country. It was even higher in some key states where Trump campaigned. He won 50% of the Latino vote in North Carolina, 58% of it in Michigan. It's the first presidential race since abortion bans became law, but Donald Trump's coalition actually improved a bit among women, going up 3, even as he ran famously against this woman candidate. Trump is now the oldest candidate to win the White House, yet he intensely and repeatedly targeted young men and newer, younger mediums like digital media and podcasts. And he cut into the typical youth support that Democrats enjoy, improving about 6 points with voters under 30. And finally, a look at how Trump did this requires something. It requires that we look at the entire map beyond the swing states, because what you see here in total, and obviously it's all a lot of little indicators, but when you see it in total, much of the country moved towards the GOP, including in states like New York and New Jersey. You're looking at those arrows that show counties going towards Republicans, and you'll notice very little blue in the other direction. That's how Trump's winning coalition came together. Now, why? Why did he win those and other groups over? The answer matters for understanding reality, as reality really is. And in politics, the answers that people embrace matter a lot because they shape power and how others respond for even years to come. If everyone thinks a candidate won because his closing message denigrated Puerto Rico or because he acted bizarre on stage, then other candidates, notice the comparison here, will mimic that as a winning strategy, just as Trump's red MAGA style is echoed right down to the red tie by his political wannabes. So politicians often claim any victory is a mandate for their entire agenda. Then the actual governing begins, and some things are harder to enact than others. So why did Trump win this election? I just told you why the answers to that matter, but why did he win based on what voters did and said? Many voters said their top issue was the economy. It came second only to democracy, which, of course, was Harris's closing message, and it handily beat abortion, as you see here in the new numbers. Abortion was a vital issue for many, but it did not eclipse high prices and economic disruptions. And in a race that ran about 50 to 47, so pretty divided, take a look at this. 68% of voters came together on the view that this economy is poor or not so good. When you take the political question that Republicans first used against a one-term Democrat, you might remember, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Trump asked that a lot. 46% say worse off, only 24% say better, 30% about the same. That echoes numbers we've reported on before the election about how most Americans think we are on the wrong track. And while Biden and Democrats did try to talk people out of that view, the reality they felt they were living, and pitch data on inflation fading a bit, which it was, one of the most striking findings in the electorate Tuesday is not about Biden or Trump's policies. It's not some embrace of everything Trump ever said or pitched. It's an electorate reeling from the hardship of high prices and inflation to a degree that many elites may not have experienced personally or always treated as a top issue. In just the last year, so not going all the way back to COVID or 2 years ago, in the last year alone, a majority said inflation caused them hardship, 22% saying severe. If you put that together in the numbers, as we discussed in our breaking election coverage on Tuesday night, 75% of voters feel that recent hardship from inflation. And Trump won those voters. He won those who said they faced severe hardship by 50 points. This trend goes well beyond the United States or Donald Trump. Voters have been booting incumbent politicians over exactly this issue, economic pain after COVID, around the world. This went on in what you could call inflation elections in democracies ranging from UK to Poland to Argentina to India to South Korea to South Africa. This has been a thing that has been well known in many places that have no Trump. So if you listen to the voters, that's the largest overriding reason. If you listen to past elections, it's an iron law of politics that incumbents are most likely to lose when the economy is bad. And there's a reason the most famous political saying in American politics still remains, it's the economy, stupid, from our friend James Carville. Those trends suggest some reasons why voters who've long disliked Trump could pick him over the incumbent party's vice president. There are people across ideologies who have come together on backing the tenets of just trying to maintain in the United States the nonpartisan goal of the type of society that Trump has defiantly opposed: democracy, human rights, and some basic respect for fellow citizens. Not having a leader who talks in a way that would get you fired from your job or booted from a bar or worse. Well, one part of that process is what now? Trump's Democratic opponents may have to assess their own party's shortcomings. I'm not talking about some immediate surrender to Donald Trump's worst appeals or mimicking him, but Democrats could have the same hard, factual conversations they so often demanded Republicans have about their side, especially in the last 8 years. And even with the big trends just mentioned, it is relevant when you look at the results and the reaction in the country that the Democratic Party basically spent a year shouting down legitimate questions about President Biden, held some primaries, picked the results there, the voters picked Biden, and then the party pushed him out in a rushed top-down process.
Relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
It was a slow start. There's no question about that, but I thought it was a strong finish.
Kind of a DEFCON 1 moment.
We have breaking news here. President Biden has announced he will stand down from the race.
That process handed Kamala Harris the shortest runway ever for a new candidate against the headwinds I just mentioned. It skipped the voting process that all prior candidates tend to go through. Democrats may find some value in exploring how they're losing ground with working people, young people, and some minorities. And even beyond the incumbent trends I mentioned, for those surprised that there is this MAGA plan and argument out there, surprised by how it sounds and what they're pitching and how it evolved and where it had appeal, well, that may come from ignoring people and information that was available. It's not a surprise to viewers of this program. As you can see here, we have been hearing from Trump's top aides, from Bannon to Navarro to Miller. We've pressed and fact-checked them according to our journalistic mission, but we've also, through that process, listened and followed their evolutions. That would be part of any informed activity in being alive and being a citizen engaging in politics. Bowing out on that, ignoring what's happening, puts you in a bubble. And bubbles are not only artificial, I can tell you bubbles usually pop. Now, whether Democrats look in the mirror, people listen more, that's really the politics, probably for the politicians. That's not the whole part of this section, though, of my report for you tonight. What now for our civil society? These 8 years of Trumpism have brought us a more divided, vulgar, cynical, and dishonest discourse in public life because of him and his apparent resilience and success. The examples are well known. I'm not going to hash through them all right now, but he attacks elections and facts. He and his party attack voting rights, your very role in your democracy. And many may recoil from these election results or want to just ditch civic engagement. That's a choice. But that's exactly what they want. Remember, it's called voter suppression for a reason. Abandoning ship may save you, but it probably won't save the ship. History is also instructive here. In past times of unrest and talk of American fascists, remember, some of our counterculture leaders have talked about turning on, tuning in, and dropping out. And that is, of course, your choice. But maybe a better course is just taking a break, getting perspective, and locking back in. In or out of office, Donald Trump also attacks forces that have the power to possibly check him. So if you give up on voting, which obviously has that power, or you give up on the independent press, that's a pretty compliant response to someone trying to get you and the public to do just that. He has a playbook against journalists. We know across the world, politicians often try to abuse power against journalists, dissidents, artists with independence and with followings because they matter. And think about it. It's especially true when an opposition, meaning fact-checking, accountability, independent information, when it's rooted in facts or independence, it's especially powerful. because it's different than the political opponents who can often be dismissed as simply competing for power of their own. We also have guardrails in terms of what now. Sometimes it's voters. Sometimes it's the law. I'm not sugarcoating history that we lived through. Donald Trump did exploit loopholes well known to many about our legal systems, that the rich and the powerful can evade laws that still bind others, that they get all kinds of special treatment, and then his Supreme Court also granted him a new set of powers he may now test. But that's only part of the story. He also was repeatedly blocked from abusing power, courts stopping his travel ban in its tracks, as you may remember. And when Trump did plunge into now proven convicted criminal plots, even though, yes, he was able to evade much for himself, his top aides were definitely held accountable, prosecuted, some imprisoned, as you see here, this very year. Trump's second-term hires could be more extreme. But remember, federal judges have life tenure. They can be a check. A president has no control over local and state courts or government in our federal system. And much of what I've said to you tonight is national in its nature, about the whole country, about the federal government. Many key tasks ahead are still at the local level. Your own school districts, your own libraries, your own local officials who are directly involved in your life that you might meet and spend time with regularly. That's not only a ripe area for civic engagement, could be more tangible and even less overwhelming for many people. So, maybe no one needs to do anything today, but even making a personal vow to at least reject that temptation, which is real, to drop out or prematurely surrender to the very apathy they want, that may be a start for you today. And as for what comes after that, I assure you, this is still a democracy, and we can still have a conversation and decide on what comes next together.